Hello and welcome to Ford Networks Network Field Day. I'm excited to be back presenting at Ford, the Ford platform. My name is Elyor Khakimov. I lead the team of pre-sales engineering at Ford Networks. Let's get rolling. So I've got my colleagues, as Brendan mentioned, monitoring your questions in chat, but feel free to ask your questions live. In this demonstration, I want to show how you can start using the Ford platform and in about 15 minutes or so, without too much work, get an up-to-date view of your hybrid network with on-prem devices and public cloud all in a single view. First, we need to choose whether we go with an on-prem cluster or SaaS, which is mostly in cloud. So with on-prem and analytics engine, the web user interface, as well as the collector all live inside that VM. The collector captures both the configuration and forwarding state from your network devices and using read-only credentials, and no data ever leaves your premises. That's on-prem. If you choose SaaS, the analytics engine and the web user interface are in the cloud, but the collector now is installed somewhere within your premises. That's why I said mostly in cloud. And it needs access to your network as well as the internet. Collected sensitive data and information from your devices is stripped, so passwords, cryptic keys, before uploading to the cloud. And that's where the data is stored, in the cloud. Now, the platform functionality is the same for both, user experience functionality. So it really comes down to IT policies in your organization. And for the purpose of this demo, I will assume that you have chosen the SaaS option. By the way, our current customers are pretty evenly split between the two options. All right. There are a few basic steps to get there with Ford platform to get started. First, we need to install the collector, and then we need to add credentials that collector can use to log into devices to retrieve the necessary data. Next, we need to add devices that we will actually be collecting from. Optionally, you can also add your public cloud, such as GCP, AWS, Azure. Those are the three that we support today. And then finally, you need to collect a network snapshot, and voila, done. You're ready to use Ford platform. Now, important thing to remember here is that collector does not make any configuration changes on the devices themselves. That's very important to remember. All right, let's do it. And by the way, just to make sure that I have aid right there on the screen, here's a little bit, steps on the side that will help us keep on track. All right, let me pull up my window here. This is just a browser. Let me make sure that I can take advantage of all the real estate of the screen I have. All right, as you can see, I'm logged into Ford app. This is our SaaS. And one of the solutions architects or your rep would provide you with credentials. I have my credentials and I will use them to log in now. All right, and my password, I'm copy pasting because it's a lot of typing. All right, so once I log in, what do I see? I see a web user interface. I can see that the network for me, for what I'm about to do, is already pre-provisioned. Great. But I can also see that there's no collector configured, meaning there's no collector and there's no network snapshot. So let's fix that real quick. I will be installing collector on Ubuntu Linux VM. And see, when I click finish collection, it says add collector. All right, let's do it. And it says pick one of the operating systems. I will be installing on Ubuntu Linux VM, where you can choose whichever operating system you're using for the collector installation. Remember, it lives on premises in your environment. Now I need to download the binary installer. It says, all right, where would you like to save this? As you can see, this is the version of the collector. While it's downloading, great. Now let's transfer this to our Linux VM. Here's the console terminal of my Linux VM. And I just transferred it, and let's see if it's there. Excellent. I see my collector. So I'm going to launch it. Let me do that. It's going to ask me to authenticate into using the root credentials. And there are a couple of things that will happen now. The collector installer will ask me to proceed with the wizard of installer, right? And it'll ask me, do I want to run this as an app or as a service? I want to run this as a service. And then the location where this should be installed. Now, next thing that will happen is collector will ask me how to associate this collector installation with your cloud account, SaaS. And for that, I will need to supply credentials. It's about to ask me that. Gives me time to copy paste the credentials. Configure collector. Yes, please. Username. That's my username and password. All right. What do I want to name this? Let's name this NFD24 collector. Excellent. Proxy settings. No proxy. All right. And look here. Once the there you go. Collector installation finished. Do I want to start this right now? Yeah, I need that for demo. So let's get going. All right. The next step, I'm just looking over here into, so you can see that I just installed the collector. Next, I need to add device credentials. Let's do that. What kind of credentials? Again, collector needs to log into your devices. Those credentials. All right, let's call them DL1. And I'm going to just quickly type this up. Hopefully without any typos. Okay, that's first. I have a second set of credentials. Okay, typing these up as well. And by the way, if you use Cisco iOS or other types of devices where access to data requires privileged password, so you remember enable password, you need to add that credential, those credentials separately. Add privileged credentials. Excellent. NFD priv 01, and I'm going to say that this is the, actually, I just made a typo. Okay, excellent. I have credentials. Now I can go ahead with the next step, which is add devices and cloud to the collector. And you can easily do this. By the way, I collapsed this little panel just to give me a little bit more real estate. That was the feedback from our customer. Hey, we would like to see more stuff on the screen all at once. So we work that in. Our user experience team worked that in. So I'm going to go to devices, and now I will collapse this. Add devices. Excellent. Now, there are two ways to do it, right? You can either discover devices, which we will come back to, or you can manually add them. If you have just a handful of devices, let's say you were testing this in a lab and you have maybe 5, maybe 6 devices, you can add them manually, one by one. However, you already likely in your environment have some type of inventory system. So go ahead, generate list, and then you can save that list as a CSV. Let me just quickly bring up. This is what that list would look like. 2 columns. First column, just device name, hosting. And the second is its management IP address. Excellent. Now with that out of the way, let's just import CSV list because that's the fastest, especially if you need to import thousands, tens of thousands of devices. This saves a lot of time. So I'm going to just select this file, open, and next. Now this wizard walks me through a couple of things, right? I need to allocate or bind the name to name column and IP address to IP address. Next, the wizard is suggesting that these are the credentials that will be used. So I will just continue because I already added those credentials. And this is really actually interesting. So I'd like you to pay attention to this one. It's very, very important. Sometimes your collector cannot directly log in to devices for whatever reasons. Policy, security, something is in the DMZ, so you don't have direct access, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You've all been there. So you can have a jump server. You can add your jump server here. In my demo, in my network, I don't have any, so I'll just keep moving. But just FYI, you can do that. Excellent. We imported 65 devices. So I'll do a couple of things here while I'm talking just to save some time. But so I imported the list, right? But here are a couple of things. See, collector now only knows about the name and the device IP address. It does not know what kind of device type it is. So I could actually manually go and assign this to be, you know, Arista, Avaya, Cisco, Juniper, whatever we support. But imagine doing this for hundreds or thousands of devices. How much work would that be? We wanted to make this easy for you. So we included this functionality in collector called connectivity test. It's a small utility, but very, very powerful and safe, low risk. Here's why I'm going to explain right now. So collector needs to know what commands it needs to execute on each of these devices. And for that, it needs to know the device type. right? The connectivity test does a couple of things. It issues, first of all, it tries to attempt to log in using SSH port to this IP address of each device. If it succeeds, and then it tries to authenticate using one of the credentials that we supplied. Remember, we supplied a whole bunch. If it is successful, then once it logs in, it issues commands such as show version, show platform, something lightweight, but something unambiguous that will tell us what this thing is. Because remember, collector doesn't know what it is. It only knows IP and name. And so device connectivity test does exactly that. And what we can see out of 65 devices, if I sort by connectivity test status, see, as I was talking, that's why I launched it ahead of time. It finished all the things here. And I see a couple of output, a couple of errors here. And by the way, just let's take a step back. I've been here 4 years, a little over that. And I've seen that these imports of devices and connectivity tests, they never get 100% pass on the first try. The networks you're operating evolved over years through mergers and acquisitions, multi-homing policies, implementing remote sites, and a whole bunch of other things. So yeah, there will most likely be some inconsistencies in inventory file. So how do we?
Elyor, I've got a question for you, if I might.
Go ahead.
So you've imported the list with hostname and IP. Will the collector do like a local DNS lookup and just resolve by name and then grab an IP as well automatically, or is the connection required? Is both of those pieces of information required for your connection?
The latter. You were absolutely right.
Okay.
The CSV list needs to have both name and the device IP address.
Okay, and the second question is, do some of these authentication failures happen during like if you have a self-signed cert on within SSH? You get that nice little nasty, hey, sorry, this is not. Do you accept this fingerprint?
We've seen, that's excellent question. Thank you so much. I've personally seen probably 36 of those where the authentication didn't work because of the cryptic keys or alt hash algorithms, etc. So our collector evolved over time to accommodate, work around, suggest, and tell the user report. I just don't have any of those devices in this list, but there's a whole bunch of, it's a list. It's listed in our documentation, what kind of errors you can experience here. So excellent question, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so let's fix one of them, right? I want to show you this authentication failed. I see the connection passed. Let's think of it. Collector managed to log into this device on SSH port, excellent. But it failed to authenticate, bummer. And now that I look at it, CVPN, that's my VPN concentrator. This thing actually has public IP address. It really does, I can show you later. So I really need to take care of this thing, make it really, really complex, right? So how do we fix this? There's a fixed issue now. It takes you to Wizard and says, well, you need to add login credentials. Let me do that. So I'm going to do that, FN05. And I'm going to actually copy this password and paste. It's a really long one. All right. And now I can verify fix right here. So question comes up very oftentimes. How long does this connectivity test on very large networks? There is a setting right here I can show you in a collector that allows you to go and configure level of parallelism, which means that we can do batches of work quicker. So our, again, user experience team thought through that because it was one of the problems, right? And what you can see here is that the wizard that I just launched using new credentials actually worked, connected. Great. So let's just summarize. These two are still out. Well, that's a bummer. Device not reachable. Well, let's click on it. See, connection fail. Well, you know what this means? This could be due to access list, blocking the SSH traffic access to this device. Or, it could also be because my inventory list is out of date, right? I thought that there's a device, but there isn't. It's been decommissioned and my inventory list is old. In fact, I have just recently, I was working with this customer on East Coast, and what happened with them is they imported the devices and they manually assign devices to specific device types. They thought that some of those switches were Cisco iOS Catalyst devices, but when we did the connectivity test, we identified those were actually Nexus, Cisco Nexus and NXOS. Why? Well, somebody made the replacement of the switches and then they just forgot to go and change the device type in an inventory system. Happens. These type of wizards is what makes your life easier. Now, is this it? Remember I said we can add devices in two ways, device discovery or import list. I just imported a whole bunch of things. I have 65 devices, but I also have this ability to scan subnet. Why is that important? If I know that there's way too many inconsistencies in my inventory list and I just want to go and see, let the forward collector scan the subnet and discover them, I can do this. Just type in /24 prefix, go and scan. But there's also one really, really convenient way to do it by using the device discovery. Now, how does device discovery work? When I click, I just clicked on that, and now collector will log into every one of these already known devices in the list. And what will it look for? It will look for CDP and LLDP tables. And then it will just generate a giant list of all the things that it sees in that CDP LLDP tables. It will then take that new generated list and compare it to existing list. And the delta is what you have not added. As simple as that. So let's see what we managed to figure out so far. This is the really interesting column. It tells you how many other neighbors that are already in this list see this device. So I can see that some of them are just one neighbor. That's fine. Let's just add them. Great. And they will all show up here as never tested. So I need to now, let me just quickly do this while I'm talking, and I'm going to connectivity test them. Right. So they're testing. While it's happening, let's add the cloud, right? Now, once we make part AWS, oh, actually, I need to, there you go. Once we make AWS a part of our model, we can extend all of the functionality and everything that you will see after my presentation, all of that, we can extend it from on-prem all the way to public cloud. Let me add those accounts here. And it's very easy, right? There's a wizard, and if you never touched this ever before, it'll probably take you somewhere around 10 to 15 minutes to add each of these. And let me show you why. I'm going to start with AWS. It asks you log into console, AWS console, create policies that are authenticated and authorized to retrieve certain type of data. Remember, collector needs the data from the cloud, and then it will process it, parse it, normalize it, render it, and we will plug it into the platform. But we need to be authorized to do that. So I've already done all of this. So let me just quickly skip. There's two ways how you can access. Again, semantics, potato. Direct access, I'm going to just keep going. Now I need to access which region I'm actually using in AWS. And I am using US West 2. And finally, it will ask me to create an account locally and supply credentials. These credentials are what generated when you go through that wizard that I conveniently skipped over. So let's just do this and test connection. Here's what happens here. Collector now takes these credentials and it attempts to log into AWS and authorize. If it finds that it's authorized, excellent, it works. Now, I can collect from AWS, but while I'm at it, I'm going to also go ahead and do the same thing for Google Cloud. Visually, it may look just a little bit different, but factually, it's very similar thing. You create an account, you allow that account, authorize it to do certain things, except of the username password, it gives you JSON file. So let's just drag and drop this JSON file. Pick the region. Again, I'm on US West, Oregon. Next, test connection. So while this test is happening and while the collector is trying to authenticate and authorize to see whether it has sufficient authorization to retrieve data, we can, oh, actually, there you go, it's finished. We can now go ahead and take full snapshot. Let's just quickly summarize what we did. We installed the collector, we added device credentials and added devices themselves. Then I added cloud and I can now take full snapshot. And as you can see, you can monitor the progression here. Connectivity tests, we've already finished them. Snapshot collection, you can see that if you open details, you will see commands that we're issuing. You know, they flash through so fast that it probably just makes sense to look at the progress bar. And that's it. So once the collection of these of this information from devices finishes, forward platform, remember, this data will be uploaded to the cloud. And in the cloud, it will be subjected to processing, parsing, computation of the model. There will be speakers next to me. Glenn, I believe, will be talking about the model and the intricacies of it and really how useful it is. But this is it. This is where it starts. So once the indexing of the objects finished, you will see the snapshot. And in that snapshot, you will actually, I'd like you to pay attention to that. In the snapshot, you will see that links show up. I'm going to go there next. 73 devices successful, 2 failed. You know why? Remember, I had 2 devices in my list that I couldn't connect to. Those are the devices. View snapshot, and there you go. Remember, I asked you to focus on links. These links are dynamically rendered. I didn't connect anything. Everything is dynamically connected here. You know how it's possible? Forward platform, after it collected all the data, it looks into CDP, LLDP tables. It looks into ARP and MAC tables, and it makes sense of the data that it receives. And using high quality heuristics algorithms, it identifies how devices are interconnected. So I can zoom in, look at these.
I'm sorry, another question. Does that mean if if I'm working with a customer to help integrate this thing and they don't run CDP or LLDP for security postures or whatnot, you can still get this piece of information based on MAC tables?
Absolutely.
Okay.
As long as the traffic exists in the network and you have a forwarding state ARP entries and MAC entries, we can infer links. In fact, that's what we call them. Links are inferred using link inference, or mathematically we call it heuristics algorithms. But yes, that's exactly right. Spot on.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Arista, I have, what is this thing? AWS. What about this guy? Cisco. Okay, what about this guy? Cisco. Excellent. So now, if I want to massage things, right, I have ability to, if this diagram, of course, it likely does not look like what you expected. You can select things, move them around. You can group them. You can auto layout. Auto layout actually already happens. So that's what it looks like. And then you can save and it's ready to use, right? If I have let's say, what is this? This is Google Cloud. Yeah, you can right away start doing the search, path searches, go through the devices, routing, switching. Glenn will cover that. So step number 4, complete. Let's go back to our presentation just to summarize. And I don't want to be in the way of you seeing the rest of the actual functionality. Now, if we summarize, we installed the collector on Linux VM. It has ability to reach into devices and into internet. We added credentials that are sufficiently authorized to retrieve data from your devices. Then we imported CSV list. The CSV list actually originally originated from your inventory system, whatever that might be. Then we ran a device discovery to find those potentially missing devices. And you remember, initially we imported 65 devices and we discovered 10 more. That means that my initial CSV list was missing 10 devices. So we added credentials to collect from cloud and we collected snapshot. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Unboxing is now complete. It was fast, painless, and low risk process.
So that seemed too fast.
Yeah.
And if I've got a large on-prem network, it's probably going to take a little longer. So what's the largest collection you've seen, and how would I make that faster if I've got a really big network?
Yeah, that's a very good question. As I mentioned here, we have ability to tweak and adjust concurrency and how quickly we can do, but I'm sparing you all the details. Let me just tell you this. About 4 or 5 weeks ago, one of our customer success engineers onboarded almost, I want to say about 18,000 devices 18,000 devices into the platform, and it took less than a week